I'm Jaime Ocon, and here's what happened this week. Taiwan is holding its first Design Week in Taipei. The event is held around the world and aims to showcase distinctive local designs. Eugene Huang has more.
30 seconds of songs from Mexico, paired with these themes. They're showcasing Mexican designs with Taiwan in mind. These installations are a part of Taiwan's first Design Week. The expo is held in cities around the world to highlight the works of local designers. And it's also an opportunity for exchanges between host countries and global designers. This time, 5 countries answered Taiwan's open call.
我觉得很重要的应该是说，台湾的设计力在国际上能够被看见，而不只是一直在对内做出一个输出。
More than 50 teams are showcasing local designs, such as these mechanical flowers, inspired by a type of flower that only grows in the extreme climbs of Nanhu Mountain on Taiwan's east coast. It's seen as a symbol of the country's resilience. Materials frequently used here in Taiwan are also on display, including some that can't be found in other parts of the world. The east of Taiwan is rich in this mineral, serpentine, and it's often used to make vintage-style furniture. And most of these works are made by teams of fewer than 9 people.
在小编制的团队里面，每一个 founder 都可以贯彻自己的 spirit、自己的意念，然后做出很多不一样的，除了自己的核心的业务以外，做非常多 crossover， 然后做很多实验性的尝试。
Countries can only become members of World Design Weeks after they've held their own Design Week for 3 years in a row. As this is Taiwan's first year, organizers hope they can keep up the momentum to officially join the international design community. Devon Tsai and Eugene Huang for TaiwanPlus.
December 1st is World HIV/AIDS Day. To mark the occasion, one Taiwanese group is putting on an exhibition showcasing the daily realities HIV-positive people face. Tiffany Wong takes a look.
An art exhibition in Taipei about the daily realities of living with HIV. Called Pause Movement, short for HIV positive, the show aims to help people living with the disease reclaim their bodies. This piece is Pause Bath, a private performance in which the artist, Zheng Zhiwei, who is HIV positive, washes a stranger who is also living with HIV. It's an intimate experience meant to help them heal.
They often think they're dirty. Yeah, and me, for example, I've been living with HIV for almost 8 years. And in the beginning, for like 3-4 years, I couldn't let others to touch me. You know, I thought I was dangerous. But inside, you know, I wanted to be touched. I wanted to be caressed. I wanted to be loved.
Though not curable, HIV is treatable and can be controlled with medication, so it becomes undetectable and untransmittable through sex. Official estimates say there are some 35,000 people living with HIV in Taiwan, with 80% now treated to have undetectable viral levels. This art exhibit's curator says he hopes Pause Movement will be an inclusive experience for all people living with HIV.
For HIV/AIDS, we often see the resource for, let's say, LGBTQ plus member or gay members, and you rarely to see there's an organization or there's a place for female only. But they are HIV positive females there. But it's really difficult for them to find the resource just for them.
The exhibit itself is a resource of sorts, showing how some HIV-positive artists are healing themselves through their work. And the artists hope in turn to help other HIV-positive individuals find a community, learn to accept themselves, and live their lives courageously. Kama Shi and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, scientists in Taiwan developed a traditional medicine to combat the virus. As Laurel Stewart reports, they now say it's effective against other cold and flu strains.
这是那个清冠1号
Traditional Chinese medicine made here in Taiwan. Called NRICM 101, this formula was created during the pandemic to treat COVID-19. And it's since been used around the world to combat the disease. Now scientists say tests show it's effective against different types of flu as well, and it can also help battle bacterial infections.
这些外来的病原进到身体以后，身体启动的免疫反应呢，都是通过类似的作用机制啊。以前我们把细菌跟病毒分得很清楚，细菌要用抗菌药、抗生素，病毒要用抗病毒药。新冠1号、2号呢，都可以在这些发炎的机制上去把它抑制。
The medicine's formula is a multi-target treatment made up of 10 different plants. It was originally made to stop the COVID-19 virus entering the body's cells. If the virus happens to get into the cell, the medicine prevents them from multiplying and also keeps the immune system from attacking itself. And now, if the medicine is used against regular cold and flu, scientists say it won't cause the viral and bacterial strains to become drug resistant.
因为多靶点，所以比较不会去担心抗药性的这些病毒株的反应。因为它们是单一靶点的一个治疗，所以其实会有一点不同。
As winter arrives in Taiwan and cold and flu start to circulate, the drug's creators hope it will let the public breathe a little easier. John Su and Laurel Stewart for TaiwanPlus.
Former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger died this week, aged 100. The veteran diplomat served under 2 presidents and led a tactical shift that would redefine Taiwan's place in the world. Stash Butler has more.
A historic meeting that laid the foundation for today's global balance of power. And behind the handshake, the brusque US diplomat who made it happen.
We knew that the normalization of relations between China and the United States was essential for the peace of the world.
The fragile peace Henry Kissinger brokered still endures, the terms of the deal defining the 2 rivals' competition to this day. It's typical of Kissinger, the powerful US Secretary of State, whose mark can be felt across decades of history. Seen as brilliant by some and an egotist by others, Kissinger was a Harvard-educated Jew who fled to the US from Nazi Germany and rose to the highest levels of power, first as National Security Advisor under President Nixon, then as his Secretary of State, cementing his grip over US foreign policy, which he wielded for peace talks in the Middle East, and deals on Cold War arms controls in the USSR. But he also oversaw the United States' bloody withdrawal from Vietnam and its bombing of Cambodia. When Kissinger won a Nobel Peace Prize in 1973 for brokering a ceasefire in Vietnam, 2 Nobel Committee members resigned in protest. President Ford said in Kissinger's own mind he never made a mistake. He defended US policy in South America, where he was accused of allowing coups, like the one that toppled Chile's Salvador Allende. Kissinger denied involvement.
And our concern was with the election in 1976, and not at all with a coup in 1973 about which we knew nothing.
A champion of pragmatic diplomacy, Kissinger reconciled the United States and the People's Republic of China, or PRC, to isolate the USSR. But the move also meant cutting ties with Taiwan and its leader Chiang Kai-shek, a decision central to the island's exclusion from international organizations.
When Kissinger started the process, that was what I think paved the way under the Nixon administration for the replacement of the China seat at the UN by the PRC and the ejection of Chiang Kai-shek's representatives.
Long after he left office in 1978, Kissinger remained an enduring figure in US ties with China, a country whose leader he visited repeatedly, well into his 90s. His death at 100 will reignite debates that began years ago over an intensely divisive figure whose decisions will echo for decades to come. Eason Chen and Stash Butler for TaiwanPlus.
December 1st marked the 80th anniversary of the Cairo Declaration, the product of a 5-day summit during World War II that some say helped determine Taiwan's fate. But even today, the statement's significance remains a controversial topic in Taiwan. Jaime Olivier explains.
In late November 1943, at the height of the Second World War, the leaders of 3 Allied powers met in the Egyptian capital of Cairo. The topic of their discussion? The fight in the Pacific against Imperial Japan and the establishment of a post-war order in Asia. It was one of many summits between U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, but was the first and only one to include then Chinese leader Chiang Kai-shek. At that time, Chiang's Republic of China was still considered a relatively weak power. To sit alongside the world's two most powerful heads of state was a big step up for him.
It marks a real turning point in China's international position. The China of Chiang Kai-shek, the China of the Kuomintang, of the Nationalist Party, was essentially being treated as a full-scale war ally, not as a semi-colonial state. So it was an important moment for China to attend this conference.
The key figure behind Chiang's presence there was Roosevelt. He believed that the ROC armed forces could help tie up Japan's troops in China, allowing the U.S. to devote more resources to its war effort in Europe. Roosevelt urged Chiang to keep up the fight against Japan and supported Chiang's goal of making Taiwan, then under Japanese control, a part of the ROC after the war. At the end of the meeting in Egypt, the three leaders produced a statement that was broadcast to the world on December 1, 1943. It declared that Japan, once defeated, would be forced to return all the territories it had taken from China, including Taiwan, then known in the West as Formosa. To this day, historians still disagree on the significance of the Cairo Declaration to Taiwan's international status. For some, it was cut and dried.
各位熟知的1945年后期发生的这个斯大林、罗斯福跟丘吉尔他们开的这个国际会议里面，对开罗宣言并没有反对，甚至接受开罗宣言的看法。来执行后来台湾归还中国的一个想法跟主张。
Others have questioned the declaration's legal basis, saying it was no more than a press statement put out by leaders during wartime.
The Cairo Declaration itself is very important, but it's just one stage of the war. At that time, it's just an intention. Rather than an actualized fact.
Critics also say the declaration violated the self-determination of the Taiwanese people, since none of them were asked whether they wanted to be put under Chinese control. But some argue there was excitement in Taiwan about ending a half-century of Japanese colonial rule. It was only later, after Chiang's government began repressing the local population, that many started turning against it. Yet another interpretation of the Cairo Declaration comes from the Chinese Communist Party. Beijing says the statement gives it sovereignty over Taiwan because it overthrew the ROC as China's governing force at the end of the Chinese Civil War. It's part of what Beijing calls its historical claims to Taiwan, which it has vowed to take by force if necessary.
台湾回归中国是二战后国际秩序的组成部分。开罗宣言白纸黑字写着。
But throughout the years, even after it became a democracy, Taiwan's position has not changed, that the Cairo Declaration gives the ROC sole sovereignty over Taiwan. 8 decades after its announcement, what the Cairo Declaration meant for Taiwan is still a hotly debated issue, but what's clear is that its place in history is important, and its content has continued to influence international relations in Asia in the years since. Devin Tai, Klein Wang, Sam Hui, Ed Moon, and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
A massive carp has been caught in a top Taiwan tourist destination, Sun Moon Lake. The fish is over 70 centimeters long and weighs more than 15 kilograms. Large carp like this used to be common in the lake in central Taiwan, but their numbers have been dwindling. The catch is considered a sign of success for the government as efforts to boost native fish populations by controlling invasive species. Thank you for watching. Here's what happened. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, take a look at Taiwan's tallest Christmas tree lighting up in central Taiwan's Lisan. I'm Jaime Ocon. Take care and see you next time.